Welcome to Female Founder World. It's your host, Jasmine Garnsworthy here, and today's conversation is with Nichole Powell, the founder of Kinfield. So we're going to obviously dive into all of the specifics around your brand and what you're building, but I want to just go back a little bit and let's set the scene for folks who aren't super familiar with you. What was your path to entrepreneurship and what were you doing before you launched Kinfield?
I had not grown up thinking that I would be an entrepreneur. So it was really actually my first role out of school brought me out to San Francisco, to Silicon Valley. And I was working for a big tech company at the time. And it was an amazing introduction into kind of just the startup scene and the world of entrepreneurship. So much so that I actually ended up leaving my career at my big tech company and joined a women's fashion e-commerce startup as the founding team was just getting it off the ground. And so joined them as their first hire. And I was with them for about 3 years. And it was in that role. And I loved getting to work there and loved being inside a startup. And that's where I was when I actually initially had the idea for Kinfield. So I was already in the startup world, but not from, something that I had grown up with. It was really something that had come to me as I was in my career.
Interesting. And then how did the idea for Kinfield actually come about?
The idea actually came really organically. I had been packing for a trip to Yosemite with a group of friends. And in my time in California, I had always grown up in a really outdoorsy family. So I had always been the one in my friend group who was hiking or camping. And, it was the first person that people would say, oh, I want to go hiking. I want to go camping for the first time. Would you take me? And so it was on one of those trips. I was taking a group of friends camping in Yosemite for the weekend. And as I packed for this trip, I realized that the, hair products that I was using, the beauty products, even the home cleaning products had become these sustainably designed, beautifully sourced, thoughtfully crafted brands. And I realized as I was packing that I was still bringing along many of the same products that I remembered using as a child, right? So it was the same DEET bug repellent. It was the same dyed lime green aloe gel. It was the same, sports sunblock that, makes me break out just if I look at putting it and consider putting it on my face. And so it was really that moment of looking at those and realizing that while I had grown up, the products that I was using in the outdoors hadn't, and asking myself why that was and really questioning whether there was a better alternative and a better vision possible.
I definitely remember, I'm someone who I grew up very much outdoors. And yeah, we would have in Australia, it's called Aerogard, which is like this. I mean, it's an Australian staple in every household now, but it's a pretty hideous bottle and the stuff in there cannot be good for you. So it's definitely, I can see how this category was just ripe to be updated by a brand like Kinfield.
Thank you. Right. And I think a lot of us have that really strong memory of being a kid, right? And having your parents, well-intentioned though they may be, spraying you down with bug repellent and having that just be this sticky, smelly experience. And that really sat with me so strongly. And I realized, I'm still using these same products, not because I love the experience, but because I didn't have a better alternative. And I got really intrigued by the idea of, was a better alternative possible? And if so, what might that look like?
Okay, let's dig into the specifics here. Once you have an idea, I think there are a lot of people listening who maybe they have an idea for something that they think, yeah, this needs to exist in the world. This is something that I want. This is something that my friends want. How did you actually go about turning your idea into a thing that was a physical product on an online store? What were those first steps?
Well, I think the first thing first comes with you should validate your idea. I had actually considered a couple of different ideas over time around, potential companies that I could start or things that I could work on. And the first question I always ask myself was, is this something where is there a market for this idea, right? So you could make the best trombone oil in the world, but is there enough of a market to really validate having a whole business around this? So first and foremost, is there a market for this solution that you might be thinking about? And is this a real problem, right? So is this not just a nice to have, but is this really something that people feel deeply and are looking for a solution for? And then also, are you the person to build this? So there are definitely things that I had considered where I had looked at the idea and thought, I think that there's a need there and I think that there's a market for that solution, but I don't know that I have the right set of skills to solve that problem. And for me, what really allowed Kinfield as an idea to really just root down into my soul was the feeling that I knew from my firsthand experience that there was a problem, right? There was really that consumer need of wanting clean, effective alternatives to these conventional categories and being unable to find products that would actually work. So I knew from my own experience that there was a problem that needed solving. And I also knew that there was a potential for a solution because of actually an experience that I'd had before with using an Indonesian citronella based product and having it work. And so really getting, the sense of, okay, I know that there's a problem. I think that I can come up with a better solution. And then also looking at my unique set of skills and really thinking about, when you're starting a company, this is something that you are going to be obsessed with, not even just, mildly interested in, but you should be obsessed with this idea to the point where you are going to want to work on this for the next 5 to 7 years, call it, right? And this is going to be the topic of conversation that anyone that you meet, at a group dinner or, people when you're stopping on the street are going to ask you, what is it that you do? You need to be so obsessed with this idea. And I really was. I really got obsessed with this, and feeling like I have the right set of skills to be able to bring this to life in a way that hasn't been done before. I have the firsthand experience. I've grown up in the outdoors. I've been outside and, been backpacking and mountain bike racing and doing that for my whole life. And I also am a really knowledgeable and informed consumer. So if I can't find a better alternative that sits in this really, functional product category, but also lifestyle focused and being the kind of brand that I felt was inclusive and welcoming and really spoke to the modern outdoor consumer in the way that I identified. So I really felt like I was the perfect person to solve this problem that I knew was a real problem. So I think the important question of that is, how did you know it was a real problem? So obviously, if you already experienced this as a consumer, I think, solving for a consumer of one is always a great place to start. But of course, if you're building a whole business around it, you need to know that there are going to be other people like you out there. And so a great place to start is to look around for your community and go deep dive with them. Ask them about their insights. I was in a group in the Bay Area called the Bay Area Outdoorsy Women, and it was a Facebook group. And so I posted in that Facebook group, and I didn't ask them, would you want this? Because of course, you tell people, would you want flying cars? They say, of course, sure, sounds great. But really what I wanted to know was, what products are you using right now? And are you having pain points with those problems? And so I did this series of customer interviews. And what I heard over and over and over again organically was that people were validating that the problem that I was experiencing as an individual of one was actually a problem that was felt by many. So that was what gave me ultimately the confidence to say, okay, I want to quit my day job and I really want to dig into this because I can show that there is an audience. And I'm willing to bet that if I'm having this problem and if this Facebook group of 2,000 women is having this problem, there are probably a lot of people out there that are having that problem. And that was really what gave me the motivation to then continue to expand. And so it can begin as early as simply finding a great set of target customers and asking them those questions and getting them to volunteer the problem that you're trying to solve rather than asking them if they think that that's a real problem, because it's always easier for people to say yes or no, but it's really interesting if they start volunteering the problem for you and that's really what gave me that motivation of like, wow, yes, this is something that other people are feeling too.
That's great advice. I think that advice of look around for your community and then ask them to help define the problem is an awesome starting point. In terms of how you actually go about facilitating those customer interviews, were you reaching out and hopping on a Zoom call with these women? Were you doing like a Google form? Like, how were you actually facilitating that? And how many women do you think you spoke with in the early days as you were kind of working out exactly what the problem is that you wanted to solve and what the solution looked like?
I started just with a simple Google form. The post that I had posted in the group, and I should actually go look back and see if I can find it still. But the post that I had put in was just that I'm looking to understand what kind of products people are using outdoors when you're going hiking or cycling or backpacking. I'd really appreciate if you could fill out this simple survey. And it asked them for their email and asked them, what products are you using right now? Where do you buy them? Do you like the products that you're using now? What do you like? What don't you like? And then from there, I also, if I remember correctly, I think I closed with would you be willing to talk with me about this further? And really from there, kind of giving them the open-ended questions where they could volunteer their pain points as they saw them. And I actually saw that people were quite willing. I think I probably spoke to about 100 to 150 women all in, some just over email, some over the phone, but was able to see, again, you kind of get enough information and enough answers from those free form questions to start to pick out these commonalities of seeing that there was a desire for better products. Now, the brand positioning was something that really came from my internal sense of my background is in marketing, and so I had a better sense, I felt, for where I wanted the brand to sit from a positioning perspective. But I think especially from a product perspective, being able to have the way that you're shaping the products that you're bringing to market, having that be driven by real consumer insights, I think is incredibly helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of the founders that I've spoken with who have built brands that I really connect with, they come to it from that marketing and branding background. And they seem to just intuitively really understand who their customer is and how to speak with them. And I think that that's really important for building that kind of foundational community that will then go on to be the champions of your brand and be so important as you grow. Like, I think it really is, what people say about that first, like 1,000 customers or 1,000 community members being the most important relationship that you have in your brand is absolutely true. And folks who come from a marketing and branding background seem to really intuitively understand how to foster that community around them. I wanted to ask you about launching next and what it was how you actually went about getting those first customers. Was it going back to the women that you kind of first interviewed, and was that your launch group, or how did you get your idea into the world once you actually had a physical product to sell?
Well, I do want to back up even before, kind of once you get that product. My background is not in product creation. And so the actual act of creating our first product, which was that deep free bug repellent, I did so backwards, but in a way that I think actually allowed us to go to market with such a strong product, because I was really obsessed with understanding every piece that went into a product, right down to, I flew to Indonesia and have actually stood in the fields where our citronella is grown and is harvested. And I've been to the places where it's processed into an oil, and have really seen kind of every single step of this. I've spoken with the people who work in the fields. And then, gone from that to then going to different manufacturing facilities and labs and talking with different chemists, and finding our eventual R&D team who then helped me take that raw material and then put it into a far more effective formula than I would have ever been able to do at home by myself, in my kitchen. Though I will admit I did try, and it was the results on that were not pretty. This was definitely a case where professionals are far better, and professional for a reason. But
I think that's a good instinct, just to be like, what can, like
what can I do?
Yeah, what can I do? Like, that is the instinct. And I think it's great to have a go. And then you realize, what, should probably bring in the professionals to do this.
Absolutely. And it gave me a really, I've been very hands-on with every single one of our product formulas, especially because, our formulas are our own. We do not white label our formulas. They are formulas that are created with our consumers in mind, and really driving, coming from our insights, both as a team and as a community, around way that we want those products to show up and their use cases and all of that. But yes, I am definitely a very, and I think our R&D team would tell you this, I'm very hands-on when it comes to making sure that our products look and feel the way that they do, and that they perform the way that we do. And we actually utilize this amazing community that we call our field testers. And they are a group of volunteers who we pull from to be able to test any new formulations that we're working on. So our lab will put together, 20 extra samples of a new formula, and we will then go and chat with our community of field testers and say, okay, we're working on this new, for example, when we had our sunscreen and we were working on that, we said, hey, we need to send it to people across the country, different altitudes, different activity levels, different ages. And we need to have you put this sunscreen to the test in every manner that you can think of. And they did. And they came back with that formula feedback. And that was what ultimately gave it, I think, got it to the place where it did today, where it really is a differentiated and amazing formula. But going back to what you had asked about launching and how we thought about that first market, we launched online only. So launched in just before the 4th of July in the summer of 2019. And our first strategy was really based on word of mouth and on earned media. So we brought on a PR team at launch rather than do a bunch of digital ads, which I do think that digital ads and paid media definitely has a role and an important one in marketing mix, but that shouldn't be the only thing that you're doing. And I really wanted, I think, especially because I feel like what we're doing is so differentiated in that we're truly creating a category around outdoor products, right? And so I knew that I wanted our story to be told far and wide because it was such a personal journey to create Kinfield. And what I saw from even just preliminary conversations that I was having ahead of the launch was that my story was really something that people resonated with, and that was going to be a big part of our go-to-market strategy, was sharing that and sharing how personal the journey was to bring these products to market. And because I think, especially when you're working in a functional category the way that we are, you need to be able to have the validation of, hey, we say this product works, but you don't need to just take our word for it, because go look at these trusted experts that have also put these formulas to the test. And this was, of course, at launch, you're not going to be able to launch with 1,000 customer reviews. And so we thought, okay, well, let's send it to the people who see every new product launch under the sun, which is to say these editors and these writers, and let's let them review it. Let's let them validate this product for us. So at launch, we saw a tremendous response around earned media. And so a lot of features. And now at this point, we've been very fortunate to be featured by everywhere from the New York Times to Vogue to Refinery 29 to Fast Company. Bon Appetit even wrote a profile on our repellent this summer, which is maybe one of my favorite ones as a foodie also. But yeah, and I really think that came from the story and the positioning of the products really resonating with people and being excited to share that story more broadly.
I think that's a really clever strategy. I think phrasing it that way is finding the trusted experts in that category when you launch, so that you're launching with some, the customers are more likely to trust you. And, in the skincare space, that might be a beauty editor, it might be a dermatologist, it might be an influencer, but having someone to kind of lend credibility to you as a new brand, I think is super, super important.
Absolutely. And in today's day and age, with it being as crowded as it is, consumers are smart. They don't want to be sold to, they want to be shown how your product is going to change their lives. And we've found that peer-to-peer recommendations, organic sharing, word of mouth sharing, social validation, all of those things have been really important at helping to communicate our value proposition and to validate what we're saying as a brand.
Nicole, the last question that I just ask everyone who comes onto the show is for a recommendation. So it could be a book or a podcast, something that's kind of helped you along as you've been growing Kinfield.
Oh, I love this question. As someone who is a voracious reader, I take a lot of the inspiration for the work that I do from books. I read fiction, nonfiction, but one book that I return to a lot is this book by Ingrid Feta-Lee called Joyful. And it is a look at all of the principles of joy and kind of how we can imbibe those through design in our everyday lives. And I just think that it is such an important thing to consider because everyone wants to feel joy and wants to feel happy. And it's something that I love returning to when I'm, considering new packaging or a new web experience and just thinking about how we can make our brand experience feel really joyful and feel really delightful, because I think that's part of the magic when it comes to creating a brand that makes people feel good and feel happy. So that's something I come back to a lot.
What a beautiful note to end the show on. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your story and telling everyone all about what you're doing at Kinfield.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Female Founder World. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to drop us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts.